This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Evan Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now, with our whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today we look back at the ANC's birthday celebrations that were held at the Cape Town Stadium over the weekend. Zambia's presidential candidates have to prove their health and fitness before taking office. That should be interesting. And look, where by-elections still will have their day in court here in Gauteng today. And we look at e-learning. We'll follow on high-profile nannies child abuse cases that's been in the media of late. But before we get there, let's get the day's news from Katrina Milan.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrina Milan, and let's just take a look at those top stories this morning. Nigeria's military has called for support in tackling Boko Haram after a major attack on a key northeast town that is feared could be the worst in the bloody 6-year insurgency. There are still no independently verified figures for the huge numbers said to have been killed in the northeastern part of the country. In the latest, 2 suspected child suicide bombers blew themselves up in a market yesterday, killing 3 people in the second apparent attack in 2 days using young girls strapped with explosives. Moving to Paris, France, the French government will today turn its attention to plugging security holes blamed for failing to prevent the deadliest terrorist attack on the country in half a century. This after millions united in historic rallies yesterday in honor of 17 people who died during 3 days of deadly attacks in Paris last week. The move was a display of unity in the condemnation of the attacks on satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, police officers and a kosher supermarket. The 3 gunmen were shot dead by police on Friday. Police are hunting for a 4th suspect believed to be in Syria. Back in South Africa, the South African Police Service's intention to suspend the head of the Hawks in Gauteng, Shadrack Sibiya, will be argued in the Labour Court on Wednesday. Yesterday, the Labour Court granted Sibiya an interdict against his suspension. Last week, the SABC requested Sibiya to provide reasons why he should not be suspended. The impending suspension is said to be linked to the legal renditions of Zimbabweans from South Africa. Meanwhile, the Helen Suzman Foundation announced over the weekend that it had approached the High Court in Pretoria seeking an order for Hawks boss Anwar Dramat's suspension to be declared invalid. Hearings into allegations of mass cheating during the matric examinations will begin in Durban today. Affected matriculants will also appear before the team. National Department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says quality assurance body Umalusi will monitor the process while teachers' unions will observe the hearings. More than 5,300 candidates from all provinces are currently being investigated for various alleged irregularities. In staying with education, the paperless classroom is becoming a reality. Lessons in 7 Gauteng schools are being upgraded. The Gauteng Education Department has set itself the ambitious target of providing each pupil in the province with a tablet by 2017. The rollout program starts this week.
It's our commitment to use 21st century to teach our children. I'm of the view you can't use 20th century methods to teach children in the 21st century. By this process, it means the chalkboard, the chalk and the duster are going to be dead in Gauteng.
And the West Indies completed the highest run chase in 2020 history as they beat South Africa at the Wanderers to grab a 2-0 lead in the 3-match series. Captain Faf du Plessis blasted the second fastest century in T20 internationals as the tourists were set 232 for victory, but they were up to the task. Remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page, and you can then also keep up to date with all of our journalists all around the country on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Yemen, over to you.
Thanks very much, Katrina. We start with politics in Zambia. It's become quite messy and personal in the build-up to the coming presidential elections on the 20th of January there. One of the presidential candidates has challenged the other to subject himself to a medical test to prove his fitness for office. Now, Zambia has recently lost 2 sitting presidents, Levi Mwanaswa in August 2008 and Michael Sata in October last year. Now, the 2 candidates are not leaving health to chance, they say. The debate has also sucked political parties into the question of whether presidential candidates should undergo medical tests. Now, for the latest on the Zambian presidential elections. We have political analyst and researcher from Good Governance Africa, Kate Stegeman. Good morning, Kate. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, can we start by sort of just setting the political scene within Zambia at the moment on the back of, well, these kinds of discussions that's going on in the media there?
Well, elections are coming up on the 20th of January, so things are obviously hotting up like they would in sort of any pre-election period. But what makes things a little different this year is exactly what you've pointed out, Eben, that there's this issue of the president's health. So as we've seen in the last 7 years, 2 sitting heads of state in Zambia have passed away. And now there's been a contentious issue about whether or not the main opposition candidate basically has called for the government candidate, Lungu, to have a fit bill of health. And in the beginning, he sort of said, oh, come on, this is electioneering and this is vicious and etc. And then sort of more recently, he seems to have said, okay, fine, if you want to check me, that's okay. And there have been rumors in the Zambian tabloids that he might have a kidney issue. Whether or not that is the case will be seen if he's willing to be transparent.
That's a big issue, really. They were talking about a kidney transplant that he needed, and on the back of this is where this has been turned into a sort of political football a little bit.
Absolutely. And at the same time, as well as whether or not he needs the transplant, there are 2 sort of other issues there. First of all, there's the issue that Zambia does not have a good system of health. And if he were to undergo some sort of a transplant, then what's going to happen? Is he going to be pushed to the front of the list? Will he go elsewhere like Sata went, the previous president? And then the second issue is also maybe does he have a right to privacy? I mean, it's difficult. These things are complicated. So we sort of need to weigh up these issues about his rights to health versus his rights to privacy. But obviously the Zambian electorate are the most important thing here. Yeah. And I can imagine that they would want to know if that is the case with candidate Lunga from the Patriotic Front.
How is this debate playing out in the Zambian media and then in the Zambian public? What are they saying? Is it that presidential candidates should in future in that country take medical tests in order to prove their health? They have lost quite a few the last 6 or 7 years.
It seems to be that is where things are moving. And I don't think Lunga, it would be in his interest to deny that. So I have a feeling that he will be open to having tested. But then again, he's a politician. Who knows? A kidney transplant is a big deal. Yeah. I mean, that's not just, you have a heart condition, something that is easier to treat. You have an issue that needs medication. That is a big issue, and that would take him out of power. So if that is the case, we need to know about that. But I think the bigger issue here, and why it's interesting for us from a governance point of view, is that, as you've mentioned, political football. This call actually came from his own party originally. So there was a succession battle after Sata died within the Patriotic Front. There was a succession battle about whether or not Lunga would be the right candidate, and they had to go to court. Then in the opposition party as well, there was also a succession battle about who would be the correct candidate. And in the end, Mumba won against Banda, and he is now standing in that race. But we also have a third big player, which a lot of people are touting are going to take some power away from the Patriotic Front, and that's Hichilema from the United Party for National Development. And he seems to be incredibly popular with people. His party was the 3rd biggest party in the last elections, but he really seems to have whipped up things not just around the incumbents' health, but also about the fact that they have huge problems with poverty, inequality, and ailing health system. And he seems to be getting really popular and growing. And
that's one of the reasons why this health question is so massive in the country. I think you've got infant mortality rates of something like 70 out of every 1,000 births, which is amongst the highest in the world, one would think. That's why this discussion is so pertinent there.
Absolutely. And Hichilema has been incredibly smart and incredibly strategic to not necessarily just focus on Lungu and to make it a broader issue about the state of health in Zambia. And that is obviously going to be an electoral issue, and that's what they're campaigning on. There are also other issues about the economy and all those sorts of things, and mining licenses and a whole lot of arguments I'm not sure we have time for now. But in terms of social indicators in Zambia, it will be interesting to see what happens with these 3 main candidates. And we're looking forward to seeing how things go when they go to polls.
In Africa, we always have issues around the run-up to elections, whether elections are free and fair. what kind of issues. Tell us about the issues that we've seen in the run-up to these elections next week in Zambia.
Well, I think the first issues, as I touched on, was the succession battles, and that wasn't solved within the two parties, both the Patriotic Front and the MMD. They had to go to court to decide the candidate, so that's the one issue. Democracy doesn't really seem to have worked there, but they followed the institutions and the process, and they were allowed to do that, and that's fine. I would say the second issue then is that while there hasn't been electoral violence per se, it hasn't been ugly, there have been some incidents of the Patriotic Front in particular, so that's Sata's party and the incoming Lunga candidate, rallying a little bit of nonsense around some of the opposition parties. They've used an act from sort of colonial era times where they've basically arrested some candidates, some rallies have been interfered with. So while things haven't been ugly, there definitely hasn't been a sense that government is really letting opposition campaign in a free and fair manner. So we need to keep a very, very close eye on that coming up to the elections.
In conclusion, I just want to wrap up the sort of power struggles within the ruling party. The acting president was asked to resign, and there was a race scenario that played out. How are they looking going into this election?
Not good. I mean, of course, as Good Governance Africa, we don't want to take a stand. We want all, candidates to have a free shot. But the Patriotic Front, I mean, the complication is as well is that there were factions within the Patriotic Front. That's why we saw two candidates. And when Sata died, he was kind of the unifying factor. And what happened was that Guy Scott, who was the vice president, who cannot run as a candidate because he's not of Zambian descent, then he was obviously just acting president, but he basically did not endorse Lunga. He endorsed another candidate. So there's succession battles and lots of things going on in Zambia, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be in the Patriotic Front's favor, and it seems that there is a chance they might lose some power. That said, we have had other opposition leaders from the MMD party basically endorse Lunga from the Patriotic Front, and that's crazy. So Banda, who is an MMD man, has now said, actually, you know what, I don't support my own candidate. He beat me in court. I'm going to support the PF government candidate. So it really is exactly like you said, political football to the nth degree.
And the expectation of the election itself is that of being peaceful and free and fair next week?
We hope so. I mean, Zambia generally is quite a stable country, and obviously there'll be observers there, SADC, etc. And we're hoping that this act that they've been using with a little bit of intimidation, now that the spotlight is on government in particular, that won't be happening. But time will tell, and obviously if it does happen, we hope that you'll be covering it and kicking up a fuss like the rest of the media.
As we always do here at SABC News. Thank you, Kate Stegeman, who's a political analyst and researcher from Good Governance Africa, giving us the detail ahead of the election in Zambia on the 20th of February. That's next week. Tuesday it is. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, controversy surrounding the Tlokwe by-elections has not died down. The Electoral Court, the High Court in Johannesburg, will set to hear a case by independent candidates in the September 2013 Tlokwe by-elections. Now, independent candidates in 9 of the wards asked the court to set aside the results and institute an independent investigation on the outcome of the elections. They're arguing against the Independent Electoral Commission's finding that only 1,040 people voted legally in the by-elections in 2013, saying that number is simply too high. The African National Congress won 8 of the 9 wards. The Democratic Alliance will today brief the media at 10 o'clock about this court case. Now, DA spokesperson Marius Redlinghuys joins us from the High Court right now on the line. A very good morning to you, Mr. Redlinghuys.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
The case was postponed the last time. Just tell us your interest, and then what is the expectation on your part of this media briefing that's scheduled for this morning?
The DA, while not directly involved in the case, is, as all of South Africans, directly affected by its outcome. The case before the court today goes to the very heart of free and fair election, and it is illustrative of the IEC, or the Independent Electoral Commission's ability to deal with irregularities where they come up, and especially going into the 2016 local government elections, where we have all of these issues coming up on a much larger scale. This is a very important judgment for us to watch, or a court case for us to watch because it has the role of setting precedents going into the 2016 elections, which will be as contested in many parts of the country as Square was last year.
What are your hopes then for this court case and then within the wards itself? You want another by-election to be held there in due course?
The applicants have approached the court, and some of the relief that they are seeking is that the election should be held again. It is up to our position is up to the court to make this determination based on the assessment of the irregularities and the evidence presented to them. At the end of the day, the DA's interest is that free and fair elections should be held in Sokwe, and if the electoral court is of the opinion that this was the case, having weighed up all the evidence, the DA will also obviously respect that.
Well, Mr. Riedlinghuys, thank you very much for joining us. That is the spokesperson of the DA. Maurice Riedlinghuys joined us live from the High Court. Of course, the Tlokwe by-election case is before the courts there. The DA has also called a 10 o'clock press conference on the matter. We'll keep you updated on our Facebook pages and so forth as to how this important case will play out. Now, let's have a quick look at some of your tweets on matters in the media right now. Asif Manvi says, glad to see protests in France for the Charlie Hebdo attack, but Boko Haram killed 2,000 innocent people on Friday. Where are the protests? Yes, Asif, this is a question that we asked ourselves here on Newsroom. Maxwell says Boko Haram seems to terrorize northern Nigeria. Kano and Baga are both very far north, I think is what Maxwell is saying. Ongopotse Tabani says, Kolowang Rantle Boko Haram, for even 100 people to die should be a calamity that should see world action. Look at how 12 people mobilized the European Union. Now, we're adding a new element into our show from now, and that is our tweet of the day, where we ask you to send us in. The best one we find today has been sent in by this gentleman, Sean Jordan, and it's on Boko Haram's. Let's take a look at this tweet. He says, let's show the world those 2,000 people killed by Boko Haram aren't forgotten just because they are in Africa. Let's get Nigeria 2000 trending. That's the hashtag. That's Sean Jordan is asking. Thank you, Sean. That is our viewer tweet of the day. We feel it hits right at the heart of the matter. 12 people died in Europe, and the world had a massive outcry for an entire week during a terrorist attack, they called it. Well, the same thing happened in Nigeria. 2,000, more than 2,000 people are reported to have lost their lives, but there's no international outcry about this. And that is a rather sad view of the world this morning. But thank you to Sean Jordan for that lovely tweet pointing out to us where it really is at. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. All eyes, of course, are on France's March of Unity this morning. In Spain, you'll see papers of pictures of the more than 1 million leaders and people who took a stand against the 3 terror attacks that began with the shooting at Charlie Hebdo headquarters in the United Kingdom. Papers are looking at that same story with the headline, "We Stand United." And down under in Australia, the Daily Telegraph has that's the previous one, United We Stand. Daily Telegraph has a front page picture of Australians who gathered in Sydney and stood against fear and terror around the world. Before we go to an ad break, let's just have a look at what is happening across the country today. In Limpopo, the acting regional commissioner, Sharon Kunene, is expected to announce the official matric results of prisoners in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Northwest Province at the Barberton Farm Prison. In Bloemfontein, the independent candidates in Tlokwe's 2013 by-election are expected to argue against the IEC's finding that only 1,040 people voted legally in that election, saying that number was much higher. In Cape Town, the National Assembly Speaker, Balekambete, is expected to respond to EFF leader Julius Malema's ultimatum for a special sitting of Parliament to allow President Jacob Zuma to conclude his reply to oral questions that was disrupted last year. If the special sitting does not take place, the EFF has threatened to disrupt the State of the Nation address next month. Well, Time for us to take a short little break here on Newsroom. We'll be back shortly.
Warm welcome to AM News here on SABC News Channel 404. Pistorius was sentenced to 5 years in prison for killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp on Valentine's Day last year. He was not found guilty of murder but of culpable homicide. The state feels that they are entitled to request that certain questions around the judgment and sentence should be reserved for the Supreme Court of Appeal. State Advocate Gerry Nel called the sentence shockingly inappropriate. If the appeal is successful, Pistorius would face a minimum of 15 years in prison. Corky was killed during a dramatic botched rescue operation by American Special Forces in Yemen on Saturday. Corky's wife, Yolandi, says the family has chosen to forgive and rejoice in the memories of her husband.
At 5:59 on Saturday morning, I told Yolandi, the waiting is almost over. You give her that kind of optimism, and 2 hours later you get a call to say he's not anymore. It's devastating. I'm very sad for her, but she's a very strong woman.
That's AM News, daily at 10 a.m. on SABC News.
The shortage of nurses places those nurses who are working under such pressure.
To have one registered nurse looking after a ward full of patients, of over 40 patients, is unreasonable.
But Africa has made tremendous progress. In the year 2012, there were only 50,000 children. 50,000 children too many, but only 50,000 children that died of measles in the whole of Africa, compared to 330,000 in the year 2000.
For all your health issues, join Dr. Sello every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m. CAT.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's a very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser-known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom here on SABC News now. The city of Cape Town was coated in green, black and yellow over the weekend as thousands of ANC supporters celebrated 103 years of its existence in the Western Cape. President Jacob Zuma delivered the ANC's January 8th statement to a packed Cape Town stadium, addressing issues like the pace of land redistribution and the transformation of the judiciary. Zuma told the crowds that sacrifice, collective leadership and humility remain values the party should never compromise. He called on members to rededicate themselves to the core values of the ANC, which include discipline, selflessness, and that corrupt and ill-disciplined members should be removed. Now, to recap on this and to elaborate more on what was addressed over the weekend, we are joined by the ANC's Provincial Secretary, Mr. Zongezo Mjongile, from our studios in Cape Town. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us.
After a very busy week in Cape Town, are you happy today that you've met all the obligations and the expectations of this week?
I first want to thank the national leadership for taking the bold decision to come and host this 103rd anniversary in the Western Cape. And I think we must also say a word of gratitude to the people of Cape Town the people of the Western Cape and all other provinces that manage to make it to this very successful January 8 in Cape Town. Actually, it's the biggest rally that has been held in the city. According to Chalk, there were more than 70,000 people inside and outside the stadium. So it is true that Cape Town was painted black, green and gold this weekend, and it was an incident-free event, which shows the level of discipline and commitment that ANC members have. And I really feel that with all the hurdles that were put along the way, we remain focused on what needed to be achieved, which was to celebrate this momentous occasion. And equally, the president, in terms of the statement of the NEC, sent a very powerful message to the country about what this year means to the African National Congress. And for us, it sets a platform to sustain the mobilization and renewal of the ANC in the Western Cape in preparation for local government elections in 2016.
You're talking about that platform. The top six of the ANC crisscrossed the province in the early parts of last week without a hitch, really, going door to door in the small towns. It must be a fantastic platform then for you as the ANC Western Cape to now go and mobilize ahead of the election.
They have really ignited a lot of energy in communities, with people now calling us left, right and center already saying that we want to renew our membership in the ANC or we want to join the ANC, which we think bodes very well for the future of the ANC in the Western Cape. But of course, this comes as a result of the work of Imvuselelo that started immediately after the elections, when we said our focus is going to be rebuilding ANC structures. And we're starting to see what I call the early dividends of that hard work.
Let's talk about the event and the difficulty that you've had in the run-up to the event with trying to organize the stadium and the like. And we have reports here on social media that even though you had 70,000 people at the stadium and within the compound, all the restaurants along the Greenpoint Strip and the like there were closed. Is that accurate? And if so, what's your response to that?
That is not accurate. Actually, we took time to drive around. I think for the first time, Cape Town on Saturday tasted freedom, because all those restaurants had a high number of black people, which in Cape Town is unknown or unheard of, going into those restaurants. I mean, for the first time, I went to Pepenero as an example, and it was packed with comrades. I mean, the manager there said, "Songezo, this has never happened before." And a lot of restaurants around town, they were just flooded with ANC people. That's what we're calling an organized chaos. If you went to Waterfront on Saturday, you would have thought it's an overflow venue of the ANC rally. I mean, that's the turnout that you had. And I mean, people were disciplined. They were enjoying the city from here and afar. I remember a friend of mine, when we were passing the Sea Point Beach, and we saw buses with Mpumalanga and Limpopo number plates, people carrying 2 bottles of water from the seawater. You can see the excitement that they had, that there is no seawater in Limpopo. So it just shows you that this equally contributed to the tourism and the exposure of Cape Town to the rest of the country, which I think contributed positively to the tourism. That's what the ANC is able to do.
Now, there is one controversial area this morning that we're seeing. We're reading about tensions, about the ANC having to throw away 4,000 posters because the city of Cape Town rejected the way that they were printed and designed. Tell us about that and what course of action you're going to take.
Well, obviously, we have seen that Cape Town has got very unfriendly regulations towards free political activity, because in a sense, all these regulations, what they do, they suffocate our rights as South Africans to freely associate, to freely demonstrate, to freely engage. So I think these regulations have got to be reviewed so that they create a conducive environment for people to exercise their democratic rights. They are very draconian. It's as if we're hosting another FIFA World Cup. They are not in line with the values as espoused by the Constitution of the Republic, which is really, it's about ensuring public participation, public engagement, vibrancy of society, and all those things which are dear to us as South Africans.
Finally, tell us about the President's keynote address, the January 8th statement over the weekend. What, for you as the ANC Western Cape, is the key lessons and points that you're taking out of the President's January 8th statement this year?
We are very happy, first of all, that the President acknowledged many of the heroes and heroines of the Western Cape who laid their lives for freedom, because also this gave us an opportunity to invite a lot of families that lost their loved ones, particularly cadres who really unsung heroes, basically, who are really unknown to some of our people. Two, it gave the President made a very strong point around recommitting the ANC to the implementation of the Freedom Charter, which I think, in a sense, speaks to the very core of what the ANC is all about. We have already said to our structures that we want our regions to run workshops on the Freedom Charter, on the January 8th statement, so that as we move forward, our members are able to articulate these issues better and are able to inform the public about the plans of the ANC for 2015. I think the President came out very strong, particularly if you look at what the President basically was calling for, that we've got to reclaim the values of the ANC, because some of our members have begun to err. And it's important that, we, particularly here in the Western Cape, and we think it's important that we must instill discipline. We must imbue the youth in particular with the values and politics of the ANC. Because one of the reasons why we don't have a strong youth league is because some of them have really lost the essence of what it means to be a young activist in a community. We think these are some of the things that are important to us in rebuilding the ANC and strengthening it going forward.
Thank you very much for joining us today. That's your ANC's Provincial Secretary in the Western Cape, Zongezo Mjongile, joining us live from our Sea Point studios. This after a very successful 103rd anniversary rally. One of the biggest ever in Cape Town was held there over the weekend. Let's take a look now at what's happening on our Newsroom Facebook page. Of course, today you'll see there that the Golden Globes became a stage for some of Hollywood's biggest stars to rally support for freedom of expression. This after the deadly attack on a satirical French newspaper. I wish they'll do the same for those 2,000 killed in northern Nigeria. You can also find a full list of the year's winners on our Facebook page there. Then back home, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has confirmed that changes are being made to the South African Schools Act that will lead to the closure of high schools with less than 135 learners. And you'll see that the absence of President Barack Obama or any top members of his administration from the huge march in Paris held to honor victims of Islamist militant attacks has raised eyebrows amongst some people in the United States media. You can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on Newsroom's Facebook page. You can also visit sabc.co.za/news for all the latest news from all around the world. Of course, going back to the big story overnight, the 72nd Golden Globes took place at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills at about 3 a.m. South African time this morning. The Grand Budapest Hotel, mind you, if we'll just run the pictures, Johan won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Musical or Comedy. Julianne Moore won Best Actress in a Drama for Still Active. Kevin Spacey, well, took home the prize for the Best Actor in a Drama for his starring role in House of Cards. The awards were hosted for the third time by Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, who didn't hold back on even, well, the Bill Cosby jokes this time around.
Into the Woods stars Meryl Streep. Meryl plays a witch who sends the townspeople on a magical quest to collect the items she needs to win another Golden Globe.
Amy, have you ever done any Sondheim?
No, I haven't, but I could. Anybody can. Into the woods.
It's a weird word to sing, I'm not going to lie to you.
In Into the Woods, Cinderella runs from her prince, Rapunzel is thrown from a tower for her prince, and Sleeping Beauty just thought she was getting coffee with Bill Cosby.
You know, actually, I don't know if you guys saw this on the news today, but Bill Cosby has finally spoken out about the allegations against him. Cosby admitted to a reporter, "I put the pills in the people." The people did not want the pills in them.
No, Tina, hey, that's not right. That's not right. It's more like, I got the pills in the bathroom, but I put them in the people.
You're right. It's got to be like, I put the pills in the hoagie.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's fair. That seems fair.
Well, not all of it above board, I'd say, but let's have a look at some of your tweets. Remember to send us your views on Twitter. It's at SABC Newsroom. That's where you can interact with us now. Let's have a look at some of those tweets. The Atheist Club says, Allah speaks in Arabic, Jesus speaks in Hebrew, Aramaic actually, Brahma speaks in Sanskrit. They must learn English and reconcile with each other, says the Atheist Club. Deepika says, we are furious over Charlie Hebdo, we are furious over Boko Haram, we are silent when it's our own. Hashtag Assam. Yes, that is tough. Live Revolution says, if you are sympathetic and vocal about Charlie Hebdo but not Nigeria 2000, you should look deep internally to your real feelings about race. Now, our Twitter picture of the day is one sent in by Anipam Biswash, showing more than 3 million people taking part in unity marches across France. This after 17 people died during 3 days of deadly attacks in Paris, in that country. There is our pick of the day, and it talks to a very emotional march in Paris over the weekend. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back with you shortly. Michael.
I would say there's no supplements or minerals, something that you can take will completely prevent cancer.
Although vitamins help the body produce and use energy, they do not provide energy themselves because they don't contain calories. Supplements also cannot be used to replace foods or make up for poor dietary habits.
Cases in Liberia are currently doubling every 15 to 20 days, and those in Sierra Leone and Guinea are doubling every 30 to 40 days.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sello Matau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC News.
In all cities in Africa, there exists a unique and vibrant street culture which dictates the heartbeat of many cities throughout the African continent.
The city of Johannesburg is filled with vibrant scenes of hawking and selling.
This was from overseas. I think it's a donation from overseas now they're delivering to us.
Further up north, the same experience can be found as eager buyers barter with their hawkers.
The languages may be different, but the similarities are the one common thread that bind us all together as citizens of Africa.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays, 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Well, hello and welcome back to Newsroom. Let's just recap on the news making headlines this morning. Nigeria's military has called for support in tackling Boko Haram after a major attack on a key northeast town that is feared could be the worst in the bloody 6-year insurgency. There are still no independently verified figures for the huge numbers said to have been killed in the northeastern part of the country. In the latest, 2 suspected child suicide bombers blew themselves up in a market yesterday, killing 3 people in the second apparent attack in 2 days using young girls strapped with explosives. The South African Police Service's intention to suspend the head of the Hawks in Gauteng, Shadrack Sibia, will be argued in the Labour Court on Wednesday. Yesterday, the Labour Court granted Sibia an interdict against his suspension. Last week, the SAPS requested Sibia to provide reasons why he should not be suspended. The impending suspension is said to be linked to the illegal renditions of Zimbabweans from South Africa. Meanwhile, the Helen Suzman Foundation announced over the weekend that it had approached the High Court in Pretoria seeking an order for Hawks boss Anwar Dramat's suspension to be declared invalid due to its clash with the Constitutional Court judgment. And hearings into allegations of mass cheating during the matric examinations will begin in Durban today. Affected matriculants will also appear before the team. National Department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says quality assurance body Umalusi will monitor the process while teachers' unions will observe the hearings. More than 5,300 candidates from all provinces are currently being investigated for various alleged irregularities. Now remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can then also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Thanks, Katrin. Now, paperless classrooms are set to become a reality here in South Africa. A rollout program starting this week has set Gauteng's Education Department on an ambitious target to provide pupils in the province with tablets by 2017. Through all the changes in the education system over the years, we asked the question today, where are we with regards to developing this e-learning module? Now, according to some education experts, a core issue in our decreasing math results remain the way our children are being taught. Tabtor is a US-based tablet-based e-learning solution which, together with education publishers Via Africa, hopes to have a significant impact on South Africa's math performance. Now, Tabtor combines e-learning with the support of a tutor or teacher. And joining us from Cape Town is Michael Goodman, Via Africa's Group Content Manager. Very good morning to you, Mr. Goodman. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Just put us in the picture of this path that you're on, how Via Africa believes you can improve the math learning in South Africa.
Okay, well, what we believe is that we focus a great deal of attention on the matric results, and just as with last year, we noticed there was a decline in the matric results and lots of people were upset. The Department of Education has very accurately started to look at what happens in the foundation and intermediate phases, and what we're doing is we've introduced a product that will allow learners from grade R to grade 6 the opportunity to practice on a tablet their mathematics, because what we're aiming for in those crucial 7 years is that the learners develop a sense of automaticity, which means that they can quickly and easily do a sum. They need to be fluent, which means that they don't have to think about what they're doing, and of course correctness. Now, in an ordinary classroom situation, a teacher has 40, even 60 learners, and it's very difficult for her to be able to work with each individual learner all the time. What the system that we've introduced does is it allows the teacher the opportunity in real time, and yet not in the classroom, to be able to look over the learner's shoulder and see exactly where things are going right and where things are going wrong. So lots of opportunity for practice, lots of positive reinforcement mean that the learners are going to be able to participate more actively in maths and develop and make firm those skills that they so desperately need.
What about the CAPS curriculum? How do you take that into account?
We've taken it completely into account. The Tabtor system is based on the Singapore math system, and what we've done is we've looked at that, and we've taken the South African CAPS curriculum, and we've made sure that the curriculum is completely covered with all the same level of number of worksheets available, there's videos that the learners can get to help them during the worksheet, for example. So the CAPS curriculum is covered from grade R to grade 6.
Now, Tablet Tutor or Tabtor has been rolled out in 3 of your digital education centres. How did it fare, and what's been the response to it?
Well, let's talk about the response first. We were overwhelmed at the way in which this tablet learning took hold of the schools. We worked with grade 6 learners in the 3 schools. One of the schools, for example, started to do maths on a Saturday, because not only were the learners keen to go in and do extra maths, but the teacher was prepared to give up her Saturdays so that they could do it. So a very positive response to it. In terms of the results, we were able to compare last year's grade 6 ANA's results for that each school to this year's grade 6 results, and we found very positive improvement. And then we even were able to look at last year's grade 6 learners to what their scores were like in grade 5. And although it was only a short pilot of just over 2 months, we saw increases in scores by 10 and 15%.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. That is Via Africa's Group Content Manager, Michael Goodman, telling us about, Tablet Tutor or Tab Tour, how they've been implementing it here in South Africa, the success of it, and how it's going to play out within South Africa's e-learning scenarios over the next 3 years. Now, later this month, a woman will appear in court after she was caught on camera for allegedly beating up her employer's child. This comes a few months after a Ugandan dad installed a nanny cam suspecting abuse on his toddler. The recent accounts by nannies are chilling reminders that child abuse is a terrifying possibility. Nannies, when hired, are expected to care, nurture, and also trusted by parents to care for their children. What makes them go this far in abusing a child? Now, from Nanny Made South Africa, we are joined today by the co-founder, Nontobeko Mdluli. Very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you too, Eben. Thank you for having me.
We've seen all these worrying scenarios play out heavily on social media in recent times. The first question I want to ask you is, nannies in general, do you need qualifications to be a nanny, or can anyone's child just come and earn some money and look after children? What does the law say, and what do you say?
That's just the thing, Eben, is that the whole industry has changed so much. Things have shifted. At the moment, the nannies that we specifically recruit are qualified. There are a lot of nannies still out there who would have no education, no certification, but I would say that the direction that we're moving in at the moment is that nannies have to be qualified.
How do you screen nannies in your business practice and then as parents?
In our business practice, we have very stringent selection criteria. We insist that the ladies be certified. We insist that they have references. We in fact go as far as to have a system such as what the banks are using in terms of integrity validation. So we're quite stringent.
Yeah.
We're quite stringent.
We're seeing on screen one of the videos that caused such a stir on social media. Very disturbing it is, actually, I think, for parents. And parents in particular, how should they apply caution when hiring somebody to look after their children?
You know, I would strongly recommend that parents go via reputable nanny placement agencies. To hire a nanny off the street is tantamount to suicide, really. Yeah. You know, you are entrusting this person to your most prized possession, your child. So there isn't any shortcut to doing it. There isn't any other way of doing it except to go through a reputable, credible employment agency. This is the only way.
Now, once you see signs of your child's behavior changing, or you see marks on your child's body, what process do you as a parent then follow to get an outcome or to make sure that this stops?
Absolutely. You're right by pointing out that you would see body marks and so forth on the child, and that would be an indication that there is abuse going on in the home. The very first step to take is obviously to remove your child from such a person. So the first thing I would do is to let that person go. But for me, most importantly, is to avoid a situation where you have that scenario. So for me, I would say that to hire a person in your home to begin with, go through the process so that you eliminate going forward any possibility that there should or could be such a scenario.
Now, you know, in South Africa, there's this question that pops up constantly. Is it not better for your child to be in childcare from the ages 1 to 5, to be in childcare, be amongst their group, other than being looked after in the home, where there's very little stimulation for the child, and the child also can't find their place in their group and in the world, really?
I mean, that goes back to child psychology, really. I'm a parent, and as a parent, For me, the first prize is for my child to be at home in an environment that they trust. You also understand that between the ages of 1 and 5, children are susceptible to infections, and cross-contamination and infection happens a lot at the play schools. I'm not saying that it's not right.
Doesn't that build up the immune systems, though?
It does. But I would say that as a norm, as a mother myself, I do tend to see that a lot of moms would prefer for the children to remain at home
especially first-time mothers.
Especially first-time mothers. Moms would rather have their children remain in the home environment because it's most comfortable, and the children are most comfortable in the home environment. But the child must find its place in the world at some point. Of course they must, and we agree that they must find a place in due time. But I do really tend to say, as a mom, and now I'm coming in as a mother, that it's ideal for your child to be in that home environment that they're used to, that they're most comfortable. This is why it is so important to have someone that you can trust in your home.
Yes.
It's quite important.
I think we've digressed a little bit, but thank you for joining us. I'm a father of 4, and I believe that children must be given their own identity and find their own place in the world and get sick, because that's how you build up your immune station. But that's my view. Thank you for joining us today from Nanny Made South Africa. After all the incidents we've had with nannies, not just in our country, but in other countries on the continent. Thank you, Nontobeko Mdluli, joining us this morning, talking at length about nannies, the role of nannies, and more importantly, the roles of you as a parent at home in making sure that your children get the best outcomes. That's where we leave it. There we roll the credits. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. We also stream live on YouTube at that very time, with the show available, of course, on demand, always on our YouTube channel. You've been watching Newsroom. This is SABC News. We simply love it in the morning.